talking to Brittany about the birds in Alaska, and the kind of seagulls we see in Seattle are bigger. I don't know because they are fed by the tourists so much on
Probably.
in the coastal area, especially near Seattle. And here I see them very small, but they're still here. I was just wondering why they're not on the glacier silt, because they don't have any fish here. But she said that no, there's a lot of fish here in the water, especially the salmon, which comes here to spawn. And then I asked her about the seagulls, which are smaller in size, but they're very pretty. And then she told me about the ravens. Yeah, I saw a 13 raven restaurant in Seward, and they also talk, and it always kind of makes me wonder why the bald eagle is such a big deal in America. It's very beautiful, but let Brittany tell us about why the bald eagle is an American symbol of what? Strength, beauty,
I guess freedom.
There's so many things that it really offers. I mean, eagle and the white head eagle.
Yeah. So the bald eagle has the white head and the white tail feathers.
So why is it called bald eagle?
I think it's just because it's the white and it looks
it's the
bald.
whiteness. Yeah.
But that doesn't happen until they're between 5 and 8 years old before all of the white feathers are in.
Okay.
Otherwise, they're still kind of like a tawny gray, brown.
Yeah.
But there's tons of them in Alaska, and I think that part of it has to do with the American idea of greatness, and eagles are at the top of their food chain.
Soar high.
And they're very strong. They're very large, and I think it just kind of it's become some symbol of American freedom or something.
American. Okay.
I don't quite understand it. I don't understand a lot of things we do here.
So there are also regions, I believe, or maybe I'm not right on this one, about flamingos. They don't have them here because it's so cold.
Yeah, it's far too cold for flamingos.
Yeah, very cold for flamingos.
Yeah.
What about the ducks?
Oh, there's a lot of ducks that come in, but they all migrate from further south. We get about 10 million birds that migrate into Alaska in the summertime.
Oh.
I think here another one of the reasons that eagles are so honored, they are an endangered species, but also eagles stay through the winter up here. They don't fly south.
Right. Oh my God.
So you will see eagles in their nest, and they don't leave once they've established a nest.
Even in freezing weather, there's absolutely.
Freezing weather.
Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they're very resilient.
So the perseverance and the resilience and all that is a sign of strength, and that's why eagle is a sign of greatness, strength, perseverance, resilience, you name it. They don't leave when it's winter here in Alaska. One can imagine how cold it gets, -50, to the extent that everything freezes, and they're still not here in Anchorage, but up north.
Yeah.
And they still don't leave. So yeah, I was also talking to Brittany about yesterday. I found out that there is a pilot, and I was telling you about all these pilots we have them here in Alaska more than anywhere else in any other state. That there is one who actually works for Emirates Airlines in the UAE, and the other tourist who was with me in the train yesterday were having dinner. And they said that, well, he goes, whenever he gets time after his vacation, he only stays in Alaska because he says that there is no other place I would live in. That's my job there. And so many Alaskans actually, once you get used to living here in the nice, serene, tranquil, beautiful nature, there's no way. I was telling Brittany about how people live in Los Angeles and Detroit and Chicago and New York City, for example. Once you come here or go to any other place where the nature is at its best, you would definitely not want to go back to city life. So the other birds that we see here.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other birds besides the major three that you talked about?
Yeah, so the eagles, definitely lots of seagulls. The ravens here get bigger than I've ever seen in the lower 48.
Oh, okay.
especially in the interior. We have red-tailed hawks. I don't see as many of those. We have a lot of magpie.
Magpie.
They're like small black and white birds, and they're very chittery, and they might try to break into your house. As I was leaving my house today, there was one that was like pecking on windows at my apartment.
Okay.
They're very mischievous birds.
Yeah.
We get snow geese, trumpeter swans, which are one of the largest waterfowl in the U.S.
Yeah.
And trumpeter swans actually mate for life. There's a couple of birds that do that. I know eagles and penguins also do.
Oh, there are penguins.
We don't actually have penguins up here.
Not in Anchorage,
penguins
yeah.
are more Antarctic. We get polar bears up here, but not really penguins. They stay on the southern end of the planet.
What's that bird? It's with a P, I believe. It's
Ptarmigan.
Ptarmigan.
It's ptarmigan is our state bird. They're basically like field chickens.
Oh, okay.
People eat them. You can hunt for ptarmigan up here. There's actually a city in Alaska. It's named Chicken, Alaska.
Okay.
And it's named Chicken because the miners, when they all were settling there, they were going to name it Ptarmigan because they had an abundance of ptarmigan, and out of respect for this bird that's been feeding them,
Right.
They were going to name their town Ptarmigan, but they didn't know how to spell it.
Yeah.
And so, rather than look like idiots for misspelling the name of their own town, they just named it Chicken.
Chicken.
And so that's how we ended up with it, Chicken, Alaska. Ptarmigan is spelled, it's Ptarmigan.
Not many people will get it right the first time.
Right.
For sure.
And do you know why you can't hear a ptarmigan use the bathroom?
Yeah.
Because the P is silent.
That's right. Unbelievable. From birds to restaurants, folks.
All things.
So, hey, I was wondering if they have any Indian restaurants there. Probably not.
Have what?
Indian restaurants.
They do.
Is that
Actually,
right?
in Anchorage. I don't know about anywhere else.
Yeah.
I know I've been to a good Indian restaurant in Anchorage. I was pretty
Okay.
impressed.
So,
Good curries and.
but I don't see the Indian community here. There's hardly any
It's not-
living here.
Yeah, it's not a very large community. You see them intermittently. I think it's a little too cold.
Yes, it's too cold for
Generally-
them. Yes.
Generally, it's a little too chilly.
Yeah, of course it is.
And so staying in the winter isn't.
They just come here. I don't see them. Many tourists who are, as foreigners coming here.
I actually have a lot.
They do.
The other day the day after that I took you out, I had an Indian couple the very next day.
Oh.
And we do get a lot of Indian tourists, whether living in the U.S. or even coming over from India.
Oh, wow.
We get a lot of Indian tourists.
And similarly, you probably get a lot of Asian coming from China
Yeah,
and
lots.
Korea.
A lot of Chinese tourists.
Japanese.
We get some from other countries, but I feel like as far as most of Asia goes, it is predominantly India and China that we see guests from,
very.
tourists from. A lot of the tourists from China actually like to come up in the winter
Oh.
because there's a belief that it's good luck to get pregnant in the hot springs under the northern lights.
Oh my God.
And so
I didn't
we
know
have fertility tourists in the winter.
How interesting.
So if you come to Chena Hot Springs, if there's a couple,
Chena
probably
Hot
go
Springs.
away because they want they're here for their private time.
Oh my God. Oh my God. How interesting.
It's
Unbelievable.
something I had no idea was a thing until I came up here, and I went to visit Chena Hot Springs and found out that
Chena
that's
Hot Springs.
yeah, that's
Also
up north towards
Sounds
Fairbanks.
like China too. China
Right.
Hot Springs.
Yeah.
So talking about the Northern Lights,
Uh-huh.
although you're talking about China Hot Springs and China Hot Springs, that we can see them from in Anchorage as well.
You can. The biggest problem with seeing them in Anchorage is the light pollution.
Yeah.
So, you can only see them like end of August. You might start to see it up until the beginning of April, because other than that, we don't get dark enough.
Oh. Okay.
Beyond that, even in Anchorage, the sun doesn't dip far enough below the horizon to where we're still getting this astronomical twilight, and you still see a little bit of sun. So that makes it impossible, really, to see the northern lights. They're still active. We just can't see them. I get notifications.
People go
sometimes.
farther north.
Yeah. So in the winter is when your best chance to see them is, because it's not dark enough in the summertime. But you can even see them in like early fall. September is kind of when it starts, and September through early April. Going further north, you have a better chance of seeing them.
Yeah.
However, as long as you're away from light pollution, your chances are pretty good, and it fluctuates. It's not every day. Usually, you have to kind of monitor the conditions, and there's apps for that. There's like Northern Lights Watcher apps, and it'll tell you if there's a really good chance. And there's something, it's called the KP index, that measures, and it has to do with like solar flares and the magnetism of the Earth. And I don't know if anybody quite understands it. I certainly don't. All I know is it's pretty.
KP one, yes.
But the KP index goes up to, I think it goes all the way up to 10. I'm not positive on that. But if there's any index, it's possible to see it. The higher the better.
The higher the better.
I've seen KP is in the 6s before, and that usually happens when there's a solar flare.
Okay.
And so when there's the more solar activity that we're getting, the more likely we are to see good northern lights.
So I was just looking at all these beautiful roads and whatnot, but just wonder that you don't have this kind of traffic in winter. How does it look in wintertime, these roads and the beautiful lake and the mountains?
White. Everything is covered in snow.
All white.
Granted, along the edge here, on the cliff faces, snow isn't sticking to those.
Yeah.
But any water that starts to melt drips down the sides and forms like these walls of ice. It's like an ice
must
waterfall.
be pretty though.
It is beautiful.
And then the train goes to Seward still from Anchorage?
No.
Oh, no train service. Okay.
So the only train that runs in the winter time, they have the Aurora train, and that goes up to Fairbanks on the weekends.
Oh.
And it goes from Anchorage, and that's Alaska Railroad that does that. Goes from Anchorage to Fairbanks on Saturday, I believe, and then comes back on Sunday. And then they have the winter hurricane turn train still runs, but after October 1st, it only runs, I believe, the first Thursday of the month.
Oh, okay.
And there are homesteaders that still live in the area where that drops off in the wintertime. And the train is their only way to get out there. But they can only get in and out of town once a month.
So all these glacier tours and all these fishing deals and all that basically closed the touristic towns that we see now.
Most of them.
Most of the tourists there, most of them are closed.
Yeah. So this is Girdwood. We passed through here on the train.
Yeah.
And the town used to be all right here.
Right.
But because of that 1964 earthquake, they moved it 2 miles back into the mountains. So
they moved it because of what reason, though? I mean,
because this ground is so unstable.
Yeah.
It's very silty. And you notice not a lot is growing through here because there's so much. It's still very salty. If you see these trees out here, this is a ghost forest.
Yeah, it's called ghost forest.
These trees are pickled because when that earthquake happened, the water came in and the salt water set on their roots for so long that it pickled the roots, and it didn't kill the trees. It just pickled to preserve them. And so
Pickle
those
the root.
trees
That's interesting.
aren't dead. They're
Yeah.
not alive. They're not going to grow anymore, but they're never going to die because they have been preserved in that state,
Unbelievable.
which essentially has started the petrification process.
I've never heard this about anywhere.
I love being able to. You've been down this twice and still didn't have this information. I love that.
Yeah.
But no, the ground shook so hard it basically turned to liquid. And when we get closer to the
He talked about it, but not
center-
like about the way you describe about the pickle part of it,
Mhm.
and that it's still not dead,
Yeah.
and then it is preserved in that state forever.
So, yeah. So these trees,
Unbelievable.
unless somebody comes and knocks them down,
Yeah.
they're not going to die,
And they're not going to grow either.
and they're not going to grow anymore. They're just forever going to look like this,
Oh, no.
like this skeleton forest out here.
Okay, so in the long video, I'm going to stop here. Thank you.